Okay, this is the M138 Autoclave, sometimes better known as the Big Bertha. American made, used for sterilising medical instruments and solutions. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to show you how easy it is to lift with two people and then to put up onto its legs just using two people. We can do that quite safely. Okay, so Rob, if you'd like to come in. There's handles on the side, two each side, and just with a straight back, nice lift. It's very, very easy to move around. Okay, so to put the legs down, first of all, the best way is to remove the clips. You do this literally by just flicking forward and folding them back. And gently lower that to the floor. All you need to do at this stage is just tilt the unit back. There's no lifting involved in this set. Push the springs in, they'll locate on the inside. And just have to do those hand tight. Okay. Now when we move to the back set, it's best again to unclip all of the clips, makes it easier for you. And then using the handles on this side of the unit, lift up, let the door hang down, and then these two can easily be screwed in. To operate the Big Bertha, you need to be able to access both ends of the unit. This end is the unit where we open the door to put all the instruments inside the chamber. I'll show you the door mechanism first. To open the door handles, grab both of them, spin them out until they won't go anymore. Don't have to force them at all. Then we have the inner handle that operates the lock-in mechanism. If you push it up, the door will open. There's a rubber seal around the inside. This will just need wiping over. That's all the servicing it should need. Just to stop any build-up of crystals inside. That allows it to seal perfectly against this edge, stopping any leaks. Inside the chamber, it's a 119-litre chamber. There's removable shelving. You can put instruments on. If you have any long instruments, they can lay underneath. The shelves all lock into place inside. To close the door, literally push on the door, pull the locking mechanism right down so these shoot into place, and then turn the handles to its stop point and give it a quarter turn more. Above the door mechanism we have two gauges. The one on the left is the jacket pressure, which is where the water sits with the elements that electrically heat the water. The right hand gauge is the chamber, which is inside where the instruments are. On this end of the unit, once we've laid the doors down, you'll notice the cable, the power cable is pushed inside here. This has a waterproof fitting on the end, and this one is a three-phase unit, or at the minute it's wired up for three-phase. It can be wired up for single-phase. There are wiring diagrams on the inside of the leg that show how it can be wired for all different systems around the world. On the left-hand side of the unit we have a glass vial, and this is shown in quarter, half, three-quarter and full. This is the level of the water inside the jacket chamber. Here we have the control box, which houses all the electrical connections and the elements. Below the connection box is a reset button. The reset button is a low water reset. If the water drops below halfway, you're in danger of damaging the elements as there won't be enough water. So to save that happening, the water reset will separate and the electrical connection won't work anymore. Once you've filled up with water, press the reset and then you can carry on as normal. On the control panel itself, we have an on-off switch, literally a toggle switch, an LED to show that the unit is on, and an electrical heat pressure control. I'll explain that in detail a bit more later on, but to operate it for now, we're leaving the full clockwise position. Above the control box we have the filler cone. We turn the T-bar. All this has on the bottom is a washer, fibre washer, and that will hang on a safety chain so you don't lose it. This is where we fill the chamber with water, approximately 4 gallons of water. To fill this, we'll take it between 3/4 and full. Remember, we need to fill it more than halfway each time. This setup here is a set of safety valves. Any excess pressure that builds up, these will automatically open. Behind the safety valves is this is the exhaust where all the steam vent will come through. One thing to mention, once the unit is operating and it's under pressure, you must never take this out. If you take this out, you're in danger of water exploding out of here. It will be very hot at that stage. Also, this area here will become extremely hot, too hot to touch. So there's a burn hazard. The jacket around the outside will get warm, but not hot, and the door surround will also get hot. One more thing to mention on this side is this item here sits inside. This has a dual purpose. This end is used to drag the hot items from inside, so you don't have to put your arm all the way into the hot chamber. This end is used for maintenance purposes to scrape out the tank of any sediment that gets there over time. Okay, so now we come on to filling up the unit. So with the unit, on the pressure control the other side when we're filling needs to go on to sterilise. All that does is allows the tank to breathe, so when we put water in, air can come out, otherwise it'll overflow at this point. Okay, so now we come to fill the unit. Now you can fill it with a hose or a watering can. We have a watering can ready for this one, so we'll fill it with a watering can. So nice and gently with the watering can. If you do spill any water on the electrics below, you can just mop it up. It won't go inside the electrics as it's welded. So nice and gently, nice and slowly, fill the unit with cold water. The water should be distilled. Obviously, distilled water isn't easy to come by in some situations. So what we say is use as clean a water as possible. The water will always be clean to sterilise because of the temperature it gets to. The steam is always clean. The downside of using water that's not very clean is that sediment will build up in the bottom of the tank and the lifespan of the elements will be shortened. So when we're filling the unit now, we're looking for water to come from the bottom of the glass vial. If it doesn't come from the bottom of the glass vial, it means there's a blockage in the pipework. That's easy to get rid of, but it's more of a maintenance issue. So that's just one thing to look for. You probably won't notice any water coming into the bottom of the vial until we've put at least one watering can, which is 2 gallons, into the filler. Once we've done 2 gallons and then we put the second 2 gallons in, you'll see the water start to rise quickly in the tube. You see the water's now started to come into the bottom of the tube, just coming to the end of its 2 gallons. And we just refill the watering can. So with the second watering can, again slowly fill the unit. You'll see the water start to rise now in the tube. Remember, the critical point is that it needs to be above halfway. Anything below halfway will trip the low water reset and the unit will stop working. Once you get close to the top of the tube, some water may fill in from the top. That's not a problem. It's just that the level of the water is very close to the entry filler. So with that amount, we're just over 3/4 full now. Which is totally adequate for a cycle. And then we need to place the filler cap at the bottom. Careful not to cross thread this. Nice and steady. Screw to the bottom. And then hand tight, just a nudge further on. Don't need any tools to tighten that at all. So with our power supply connected, next thing to do is make sure that the electrical heat pressure control is round to the fully clockwise position. We go round to the front of the unit, and where we had the unit on sterilise, we turn turn the control knob all the way around to the off position, making sure the arrow points directly at the off position mark. Now we're ready to turn the power onto the unit. When we turn the power on the toggle switch, you'll hear a clunk inside. There's no need to worry about that. It's the electrical contactor pulling in on its magnet. That's the clunk of the contactor. You notice now that the red power button has come on, so we know there's power getting to it. And now the unit will sit and wait for about 17 minutes, depending on the altitude. The higher the altitude, the longer things can take. So now, the first thing, we can touch this at the minute. We'll start to feel some temperature building at the bottom where the elements are. And then at that stage, you need to keep your hands off because this gets hot very, very quickly. So this will now take about 17 minutes to get to temperature. To load up some instruments inside the container, we have a container here. Just hold that for me. Inside the container is a tray with instruments, and in the bottom of the instruments in the container I've put some Bowdick tape indicator. That's got white stripes on at the minute. If we reach the right temperature and sterilise, those stripes will turn brown, so we can guarantee that we've reached sterilisation inside the container. Okay, so to put the instruments inside, again, open the door. And we can slide the instruments in. Close the door. Now the power is on and the water is starting to boil inside the jacket. This jacket pressure gauge will slowly start to rise, and at this altitude we know that between 26 and 30 psi will give us a temperature in the chamber of approximately 270 degrees Fahrenheit, which will be the temperature we need for a 3-minute emergency load. Anything less than on a 30-minute load, we can go to 250 degrees, and that'll probably be back to around the 20 psi mark. So now you can see the needles very slowly starting to rise. As the water boils in the jacket, steam will build up inside, increasing the pressure, and we'll come back to it when it's about 26 psi. So the temperature now is coming up to, it's about 25 psi at the minute. So we're getting towards the temperature where we think that's going to give us a temperature in the chamber of 270 degrees. So what I want to do now is switch it to sterilise. So we grab the control knob and we turn it all the way around to sterilise. You'll hear a rushing of steam entering the chamber, and what you'll notice now is the temperature gauge starting to rise. We'll keep that going with all the full power on until it reaches 270 degrees. And what happens at the top of the unit now, at the chamber, the jacket pressure is dropping, the chamber pressure is rising, and we notice some steam coming out the bottom of the unit. That's a safety trap, and that's perfectly normal. That will eventually stop in a minute once the pressure's built up, and that's totally normal. There's no need to worry about it. You'll see now that the pressure's starting to drop off and the trap will start to close. Our temperature on the gauge is at the minute coming up to 220 degrees Fahrenheit. And at this stage, remember, the pressure control knob is on full power still, all the way around clockwise. One thing to mention at this point, we don't put the timer on for the steriliser until we're at full sterilising temperature. That ensures we get a full sterilising cycle. You'll notice that the steam trap underneath now is closed. That is the amount of steam that is quite normal to come out, and you will get a few drips of water from the build-up of steam, but that is totally normal for that amount. The pressure in the jacket is now getting to 28 degrees, and we're coming up towards 28. The pressure in the chamber is getting towards 28 psi. At that pressure, we're getting towards 250 degrees Fahrenheit. So we're still keeping the pressure switch on its full amount at the minute until we reach 270 degrees. Now, should you walk away and forget all about the unit, and then you have a mad panic and think, I've left the unit on, it's going to explode, there's no reason to panic, because the unit has an automatic shut-off. It won't get any further round than 40 psi. At 40 psi, the pressure switch will cut the unit out, so it's a safety measure. So we now notice that the pressure in the chamber has got up to 28 psi. So we know from experience we must be getting close to 270 degrees now. We're actually at 266 degrees. So now we're coming up to 270 degrees. So now what we have to do is go to the other end of the unit and alter the pressure control knob to keep it at that temperature. So a critical stage here. Now we know we're up to temperature, we turn the electric heat pressure control knob anti-clockwise slowly until we hear the clunk of the contactor closing and the light going off. Then we should return to the other end of the unit. So now we can see we're just over 270 degrees centigrade, which is fine. We need then to move across to the timer, set the timer to approximately 3 minutes. This is just a manual timer, there's no electrical control. At this temperature, at 3 minutes, we can do an emergency load of instruments. They'll take 3 minutes, and then we use fast exhaust, which we'll explain in a short while. Up at the top on the gauges, you can see both the jacket and the chamber are at the same pressure, but at 30 psi. That takes us to a temperature just over 270 degrees Fahrenheit. So now the pressure inside the chamber is at 30 psi. Temperature is held constantly at 270. If the temperature is lower than 270, it will mean that we're not sterilising at the right temperature. To stop that happening, we would adjust the pressure heat control to bring that red light back on again, allowing this to be at a constant temperature. You'll notice underneath the steam vent is still dripping water, letting some steam out. Again, that's totally normal. You can also see that the temperature gauges, the pressure gauges, you can also see that the pressure gauges are at a constant 30 psi, and the power to the unit is going on and off as on a thermostat, keeping the temperature regulated. So the timer is just about to come to its end. Once the timer is dinged, which it will in a minute, we will move to the other side of the unit where we will turn the power unit off. So remembering that all this end of the unit is extremely hot at the minute, once we know now we've finished the sterilising cycle, all we need simply to do now is turn the main switch off. Okay, so we've turned the main switch off, there's no more power going to the machine. So what we need to do now is vent out all the pressure inside the chamber. For that we need to return to the other end of the unit. So now, because we're using just a 3-minute emergency load, we would turn this dial clockwise until we reach fast exhaust, no drying. If we'd have had instruments in here on a 30-minute cycle and we wanted to do a drying cycle, we would turn this clockwise right round to the drying cycle. But for this one, it's an emergency load, so we turn this unit all the way around to fast exhaust, and then you can see the jet of steam coming out the top. Which is letting all the pressure out of the chamber. So you can see that the chamber gauge here will start to drop down. The jacket pressure will drop down a lot slower. You won't be able to open the chamber door until the chamber pressure gauge is back at 0. So the chamber pressure is at 0, so now it's safe to open the door. So again, 2 hands. Open the door out to it can't go anymore without forcing it. Push the lever up. There'll be a small amount of steam to come out because remember we haven't done a drying cycle. To save yourself getting burnt, you can pull items forward. So ideally now, once the door's open, you would leave the chamber door open to allow the items to cool down so that you can handle them. Obviously with the containers, once you've opened the lid of the container, they're no longer sterile. With the instruments removed from the Big Bertha, remember that these will still be very hot. I'm just going to show you the sterilisation indicator tape. And you see, remember this wasn't put on any drying cycle, so the instruments will still be wet, but if you can see inside, the white strips on the tape have now turned brown, ensuring us that the right temperature was reached and the instruments were made sterile, killing all bacteria from previous operations. Just for information purposes, this tool unit here is the vacuum chamber. There should be no water coming out. That has a stem that goes underneath. There should be no water coming out of that at all. If you do find water coming out of that underneath, it's a maintenance issue and it needs to be serviced. This pipe is the temperature gauge for inside the chamber. This unit here is just a one-way valve to stop any steam going back that way. And this chamber here is the steam trap, which we've seen venting out underneath with steam and drips of water. None of those would need to be touched unless it was for maintenance. So this unit here is the drain-off valve. If we open that, make sure that there's no pressure in the chamber or the jacket, and we put a bucket underneath the unit and the water will drain out, emptying the chamber totally. If you're not going to use the unit for some time, we'd advise that you empty out that water and put clean water in for the next time. So one thing to mention, you'll notice on the side of the unit is a door with a compartment underneath. Now this compartment was used for when they had a gas burner underneath, so if there wasn't power you could heat the chamber by a gas flame or a kerosene burner. Because of the implications with fumes coming from these, we've decided not to include the burners at all, and so the chamber is left empty.